Resident Evil Requiem has been a huge nostalgia trip for me, and maybe it has been for you too. Now, this isn't going to be a full review of Requiem because I'm not quite completed the whole game yet, but I'm very close to the end, and at that which point I will go back and do a proper review. But I really am just feeling pulled to make a video about how Resident Evil Requiem is just such a love letter to fans and veterans of this series, and how it's just a massive, massive nostalgia trip for me. And it might not be just what you think with Leon either. So strap in, grab your favorite beverage, and let's talk about it. So Resident Evil Requiem came out recently, as we all know. We've all been playing it, and I think it's managed to balance the old school survival horror that has then morphed into that kind of Resident Evil 7 8 gameplay with the action from Leon that we've all come to know and love, but without absolutely overdoing it and becoming Resident Evil 6, which we all know how that turned out. But the nostalgia, it hits almost straight away. Now, before we actually truly get into it, there will be minor spoilers throughout. There won't be any huge story spoilers, but we'll be talking about locations that appear in the game. But we'll begin at the beginning with Grace Ashcroft and us seeing her discussing things with her boss and how there's been a murder at this hotel, and it's the same hotel that her and her mother was murdered at. And then we get shoved out into the street and we get to walk to the hotel, and even right from there you just I was getting just Raccoon City vibes. I don't know about anyone else, but right from the get-go I just thought this is just so nostalgic in a strange way. And that only increases once you get in the hotel, because anyone who's a veteran of this series or really loves Resident Evil will know that Grace's mother, Alyssa, was a playable character in Resident Evil Outbreak. So already we're getting slapped with the really kind of nostalgic vibes. And that is such a difference from the previous few Resident Evil games. See, after 6 and the debacle where everyone said it was too actiony and strange and they tried too many campaigns, Resident Evil went in a different direction. 7 and 8 were about first-person horror to a large extent. Yeah, it had combat, but it was really about running and hiding and, especially 7 with the Jack and the creepy family. But with 9, they've really brought back the action side but reined it in. But they've also managed to sprinkle in that special sauce from the older Resident Evil games. And I'm talking not just 4, 5, and 6, I'm talking 1, 2, and 3. Because with Grace coming back, and with Alyssa being her mother and her murder and her role in Outbreak and Raccoon City in the original sort of, well, I'll say trilogy. It wasn't part of the trilogy, but come on, Outbreak was a PS2 game. And it feels like we're coming home. Does that make sense? It feels like with Requiem, they've really hit that spot of finally giving us more Raccoon City, more of that Umbrella plotline, that original T-Virus plotline, but without making it ridiculous and kicking Wesker out the back of a plane. And what I mean by all this is that, that's what captured our hearts in the beginning. The mansion, the spread to Raccoon City, the Raccoon Police Department, which we'll get to. And that's great. And, the other games were good. 4 was obviously, some people say it's the best, but I don't think 4 even has the best setting, because it just takes you completely out of the game's universe. Going from 3 to 4, yeah, mechanically it's better, Leon, gameplay, everything, but I think moving away from Raccoon City and everything, it was a bit of a shock. And then obviously 5 is just Africa and all of that craziness, and 6 was all over the place, but yeah. So, and then we moved to 7 with Louisiana and the bayous or wherever, and then 8 where you're in Eastern Europe, and yeah, it has recurring characters, which Resident Evil always does super well. The recurring characters that age in real time alongside us is one of the best things that Resident Evil ever chose to do. However, the fact that we haven't visited Raccoon City properly since 3, basically, is, it's kind of lost that secret source of Resident Evil locations. But Requiem has fixed all of that by incorporating the gameplay mechanics like we just discussed, but also it sets you off in this hospital asylum place in the beginning with Grace and a bit of Leon, and you get the mechanics and it sets up the story, and then unexpectedly, although expectedly because of the trailers, but if we hadn't seen the trailers and known about Raccoon City being in the game, you would have been like, whoa, Raccoon City, because it felt like the game was ending, when you get to that helicopter with Grace. And then you're transported to Raccoon City. But not only are we transported to Raccoon City for the first time since the bombs dropped, but, like, it's in the craziest, coolest way. Like, we take charge of Leon, and we go, it's just creepy. There's not a soul in sight to begin with. And we're just exploring all these abandoned locations. And then, obviously, the old T-Virus Zumbas start popping up and doing their thing. But as you progress through Raccoon City, moving over towards the crater, it's like you get to revisit all of these old locations from all of the kind of, originally type games, Outbreak included, and 1 and 2 and 3. And you get, there's the orphanage, there's the hotel, there's Raccoon Police Department. And going back through some of these locations is just pure nostalgia. It feels right. Especially when you get to Raccoon Police Station and you go inside and the welcome sign is misspelt still and everything's dusty and there's a cop zombie walking around still. And you see like the locations that traumatized Leon 30 years ago. And then you kind of realize that highlights the fact that Leon's a different person. I mean, despite his campy humor and his silly remarks, which, we wouldn't have him any other way, but you can see the difference between, not only has 30 years passed, but all of the events of 4 and 6 and everything have shaped Leon to become more mature, not lose his personality, but he's grown. He's grumpier a bit, he's a bit more jaded, and going back to Raccoon Police Department is a big deal for him, and he's not liking it. And that highlights yet another great thing about Requiem that factors into all this nostalgia, is that it's not just an action game. They've clearly put so much thought into this. Like when we first meet Grace and her boss is like, hey, you need to go back to the hotel where your mother was murdered, and she's nervous, and she's quite nervous throughout the game. She's not confident of herself, even though she's this FBI agent. She's kind of a bit weak-willed, a bit scared, and it's so good just to get away from these tropes of like Chris Redfield, just being the Superman and things like that. Not to say, obviously, the previous games were banned anyway, but it feels like not only is the nostalgia back, but the Resident Evil series has aged with us, and it's kind of like series veterans, I think, might gel with this, and let me know in the comments. But like, it really feels like it hasn't lost its identity, but it's matured. It's kind of said like, you know what, in Resident Evil 5, where Chris is like kicking the heads off zombies and doing all this absolutely ridiculous stuff, that was great then, like however 10, 20 years ago, however long ago that was now. But now things are different. We can still have the campy, the fun, the silly, the ridiculous, but also understand, like with Grace and Leon, that this takes a toll on a human being going through this. And yeah, that's just wanted to talk about this today because I have just been getting lost in the nostalgia of it. Just feels so, I'm back to being a kid playing the original games on the PlayStation 1 again, running through Raccoon City, except this time a little bit less scared because I was absolutely terrified at the time. And it's just, it's nostalgia done right. As I said, there will be a full review coming, and I will be doing character studies on starting with Leon Kennedy once I've finished and digested the game. There will be character studies and that coming where we're going to chart some of these arcs that we've seen, going from the original games where these characters were silly and campy and young, and charting how 30 years later, in real time, they've matured alongside the story and their attitude to events. So, subscribe if that sounds good. if you enjoyed and you're still here, giving me a like on the video will just help a crazy amount. And leave a comment if you want to let me know how you feel. Has this hit the nostalgia for you? Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.